yesterday, but continuing the celebrations today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hope everyone can see this. We're reading today from the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 2. Today's text is text 16. Bhagavan api vishvatma bhaktanam abhayankaraha aviveshangsa bhagena mana anakadundubehe. Translation. Thus the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the supersoul of all living entities and who vanquishes the fear of his devotees, entered the mind of Vasudeva in full opulence. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The word Vishvatma refers to one who is situated in everyone's heart. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hriddeshe arjuna tishtati. Another meaning of Vishvatma is the only lovable object for everyone. Because of forgetfulness of this object, people are suffering in this material world. But if one fortunately revives his old consciousness of loving Krishna and connects with Vishvatma, one becomes perfect. The Lord is described in the third canto, 3.2.15, as follows. Para varesho mahad angsa yukto, hi ajo pi jato bhagavan. Although unborn, that's aja, although unborn, the Lord, the master of everything, appears like a born child by entering the mind of a devotee. The Lord is already there within the mind, and consequently it is not astonishing for him to appear as if born from a devotee's body. The word avivesha signifies that the Lord appeared within the mind of Vasudeva. There was no need for a discharge of semen. That is the opinion of Shripad Sridhar Swami and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. In the Vaishnava Toshani, Srila Sanatana Goswami says that consciousness was awakened within the mind of Vasudeva. Srila Viraraghava Acharya also says that Vasudeva was one of the demigods and that within his mind, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared as an awakening of consciousness. I'll read the verse again. Thus, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the supersoul of all living entities and who vanquishes all the fear of his devotees, entered the mind of Vasudeva in full opulence. Om agyantimirandhasya gyananjana shalakaya chakshurun militam yena tasmai shri gurave namaha. Panchakalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prem Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratvishe Namaha. So yesterday, many of us were celebrating Gaur Purnima, the appearance day of Shri Krishna Caitanya Mahaprabhu. And it's interesting that just by Krishna's arrangement, here we are discussing a portion of the Bhagavatam that deals with the appearance of Lord Krishna. I was reading in one place, Srila Prabhupada calls the appearance of Lord Caitanya, he says it is an exact facsimile of the appearance of Lord Krishna. So that was interesting. It was an interesting way of putting it. And we see the parallels in so many ways. There are differences as well. They each have their own lila, their own pastime to unfold. But there are some parallels, and so it's, I think, very fitting that we're looking at a verse like this one this morning as we contemplate and meditate on the appearance of the Lord, whether in his form as Swayam Bhagavan Krishna or in his form as that most munificent manifestation of Krishna, who is Krishna himself, Krishna Varnam, and who is clothed in the effulgence and the mood of Srimati Radharani, Dvisha Akrishnam. So Krishna Varnam, who is Krishna himself, the blackish Krishna, Dvisha Akrishna, and whose effulgence and covering is golden. So here in this purport that we read together, Srila Prabhupada gives us a really wonderful insight into what might appear to be a paradox when it comes to the appearance of the Lord. That there are many paradoxes, actually apparent paradoxes. I hope everyone is familiar with this idea of a paradox. A paradox is something that, at least apparently, seems to be two things that are contradictory. So an apparent paradox, Srila Prabhupada refers to a couple of them in this purport. So one apparent paradox is that the Lord is glorified as being one who is unborn, aja. So ja is a Sanskrit root, I guess you would call it, that you find in words like janma, like we say janmashtami, so janma, birth. So ja, just ja itself is a way of connoting birth. So aja is one who is birthless or unborn. And so the Lord is glorified as being aja, unborn, and yet in his Leela, we see him being born. We celebrate him being born, in fact, as we did last night, as we do on Janmashtami, as we do on Ram Navami, all these appearance days. For someone who's unborn, he has a lot of birthdays, which is interesting. If you look at the calendar, they're full of appearance days. So that's an apparent paradox. Of course, the paradox is resolved because the idea is, in saying he's unborn, it's that he is not born the way you and I are born, that we are compelled. We might say we're forced in a cruder way. We're compelled, we're driven beyond our choice to take birth because of our residual karma and ultimately because of our desire. Our birth, although we celebrate birthdays, and there's nothing wrong with that, we can do that, but ultimately our birth is a symptom of our being caught in a cycle of repeated birth and repeated death. The cycle is known as samsara. But Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita that his birth, his apparent birth, is transcendental, that he has nothing to do with this cycle of samsara. In fact, that he is the source of all material and spiritual energies. And so in that sense, he's aja, he's unborn, because he's not compelled to take birth. But he does take birth. So why? Why does he take birth? And this is another one of those, this awakens or brings to mind another one of those paradoxes that Srila Prabhupada hints at or alludes to in this purport. That the Supreme Lord is always present. He's always present. Here, Srila Prabhupada says, he is always situated in everyone's heart. And he quotes, Prabhupada quotes Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hriddeshe Arjuna tishtati. Tishtati, I'm firmly established Where? Hriddeshe, in the region of the heart. So he's always there in the heart, not just of the devotee, but in the heart of Sarva Bhutanam, of all living beings. Wherever there's life, wherever there's consciousness, Krishna is already present there. Here, Krishna is glorified by the wonderful name Vishvatma, which Srila Prabhupada translates as meaning one who is situated in the heart, but also meaning the only lovable object for everyone. Literally, Vishvatma means, or one way of understanding Vishvatma, is the Atma, or the self, the soul of Vishva, of the universe, or of all of creation, or the world, depending on how you translate Vishva. So just like we are the Atma situated within a body, Krishna is the Atma of all Atmas. He's the self of the self. He's the super soul. He is the soul of the universe. So he's always present. And at the same time, although always present, he can choose to appear. The Lord is already there within the mind, and consequently, it is not astonishing for him to appear as if born. So the point of these paradoxes is not for us to doubt. It's actually quite the opposite. The point of the paradox is for us to appreciate that Krishna is beyond our what is conceivable to us. He is beyond what our minds can grasp. He's achintya, inconceivable. By his inconceivable will, he who is always present chooses to appear in a way that he actually manifests himself. By his inconceivable will, he who is beyond all birth appears to take birth like a baby, and actually does. It's not just like a trick or something. He actually does. He experiences, and his devotees, through the power of his yoga maya, they actually experience Yashoda Mai and Nanda Maharaj, and here, of course, Vasudeva and Devaki. They actually experience the joy, the intensity, the paternal love, the rasa, the relationship. They actually experience it. It's not, they're not, kind of saying, oh, I'm just in a drama. This is all just for show. No, they're actually feeling it, because the Lord is such that, another meaning of Leela is drama. So the Lord is such that when he performs a drama, he can perform a drama that is so real that the actors forget that they're in a drama. Right? Sometimes when we watch like a dramatic performance, you go to the temple or something, and on a festival day, the devotees enact a drama. If it's a really good play, if it's a really good dramatic performance, you as the audience member, you kind of forget that you're watching a play, isn't it? You sort of feel like, I was just transported. And if it's really, really good, then as an actor, I used to, when I was younger, one of the services that I was really fortunate to be able to perform, and I was really mentored in so many wonderful ways, was in drama, in Vaishnav drama. So we used to put on dramas at the Radha Govinda temple in Brooklyn. We had a troupe called the New Vaikuntha Players that was wonderfully guided for many years by a devotee named Lohitaksha Prabhu. He's a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and who had been a professional actor and dancer before joining on 55th Street in New York City. And so he would train us in these dramas. And I remember he used to tell us that when we're really feeling more important than remembering your lines or, the technical, of course, those things are important as part of the service, but more important than your blocking or your lines was when you really, as an actor, when you really sincerely and humbly tried to enter into the mood, the bhav of the pastime. That's where, for a brief moment even, you really could kind of transcend and almost like forget you were in the drama. So now imagine a drama that we're saying almost like, but imagine a drama that the actors, the audience, the actors, everyone actually forgets that it's a drama, because it's so it's so imbued with the purity of love. So that's Krishna's pastimes. So they're actually, the unborn actually takes birth. And in this purport, of course, the focus is on Vasudeva. And it's explained that Krishna actually appears even before appearing in the womb of Devaki, even before appearing in the heart of Devaki. Krishna appears in the mind of Vasudeva. And the acharyas, which Srila Prabhupada quotes from, quite a few acharyas, they all emphasize that this suggests to us that Krishna actually appears as an awakening of consciousness. That by Krishna's appearing in the mind of Vasudeva, the lesson or a lesson that we can draw from this is that if we want Krishna to appear within the core of our hearts, again, he's already there in one sense, but if we want him to appear in terms of that relationship, that personal relationship with us, it has to start, before we can speak of issues of the heart, there needs to be a purification of consciousness. We need to experience that. Vasudeva is actually linked, kind of mysteriously, but Vasudeva is linked to the idea of not just sattva, but shuddha sattva. In fact, one of the ways of talking about the shuddha sattva platform, the platform of transcendental goodness and truth, beyond rising above the three modes, one of the terms that's used for it is the Vasudeva platform, the Vasudeva or Vasudeva platform. So there is some connection between Vasudeva as a kind of representative of this purified consciousness and our own need to cultivate sattva and ultimately shuddha sattva in our consciousness so that the Lord can appear in our consciousness, our purified consciousness, and from our purified consciousness can awaken in full in our hearts, just like he goes from the mind of Vasudeva to then the heart of Vasudeva, the heart of Devaki, and ultimately the womb of Devaki. This is the journey. It's also significant that we're speaking of Vasudeva today, or this verse is by Krishna's sweet arrangement, by Lord Gaurachandra's own arrangement. This verse coincides with the occasion of Jagannatha Mishra Utsav. So today is Jagannatha Mishra Utsav. Just as in Vrajendra Nandana, Krishna's pastimes, there is the festival of Nandotsav, which occurs on the day after Janmashtami. Actually, Srila Prabhupada his birthday is celebrated, his Vyasa Puja Day's appearance day is celebrated on that Nandotsav as well. So one of the nicknames of Srila Prabhupada when he was a child was Nandu, because of this. So very sweet connection. But Nandotsav is a celebration of sweetness. Janmashtami, of course, is sweet, but Janmashtami is more, we meditate on and reflect on the Lord's extraordinary appearance. Of course, we're reading about the intense, amazing service rendered by Vasudeva and Devaki, and the Lord's very dramatic appearance in the prison cell of Kamsa and his being transferred. But Nandotsava focuses on the sweet side of Krishna's eternal identity as the Prince of Vraj. So it's a celebration of total sweetness that Nanda Maharaj is just celebrating his joy, Nanda Ananda, and he's just giving in charity and like that. So Jagannath Mishra also he enacts this pastime. And so I want to speak a little bit in just our remaining time together on this wonderful festival of Jagannath Mishra Utsav and this personality of Jagannath Mishra. Jagannath Mishra is understood to be, as we often see in Gaura Lila, we see personalities embody multiple incarnations in one, just like Advaita Acharya is simultaneously Sadashiva and Mahavishnu. I heard, some of you may have heard, Sachinandan Maharaj, I think it was just last week, he was speaking about Advaita Acharya, and he was telling this beautiful story of Sadashiva petitioning Mahavishnu, and Mahavishnu says so sweetly, you and I are one. And they embrace, and that embrace is so intense, and it's like a fusing of the two into one, and that personality is revealed to be Advaita Acharya. So these things are a little mysterious, but we have to, or I would encourage us, rather than to get bogged down into the details of how can two people be in this, but try to reflect on the sweetness and the mood, the bhav. So in a similarly mysterious way, Jagannath Mishra is explained to be simultaneously Nanda Maharaj and Vasudeva and Dasharath and even Kashyapa Muni. So he's a combination of all these personalities, all these moods. But the takeaway, I think, for us is that this is the Lord's eternal, pure devotee in the form of a father. So that love's carried over from appearance to appearance. So that this is Jagannath Mishra. He's a combination of all these. For this pastime to unfold, he appeared as the son of a very pure-hearted, wonderful Brahmin named Upendra Mishra. Upendra Mishra had, I believe, 7 sons, and they lived in what is present-day Bangladesh, in what used to be called East Bengal, in a very simple village. They weren't very wealthy. It appears that they came from quite modest means. And of all the 7 brothers, Jagannath Mishra was the one who really, from an early age, showed himself to be not just a very gentle and sweet-hearted Brahmin, but also a very brilliant mind. And so he kind of took to the intellectual path, the academic path. And so of all the 7 brothers, 6 remained in that kind of ancestral village. But Jagannath Mishra, he traveled to Navadvip in West Bengal. So why did he go to Navadvip? We have to understand Navadvip at this time was the high seat of learning. It seems maybe a little strange to us now. We might go to visit Navadvip, and we don't want to make any kind of dham offense because it is a dham, but it doesn't, it's a nice place, nice, sort of Indian village. It doesn't necessarily strike us as like the way we would, especially if we're coming from the West, we might think of like Oxford or Cambridge or, Harvard or Princeton or one of these type of places. But Navadvip in all of India at this time, and perhaps even beyond the boundaries of India, Navadvip was celebrated as the premier place for scholars of logic, for scholars of astronomy and astrology, for scholars of theology and philosophy and poetry. They would gather, and at the ghats. Everyone knows what a ghat is. A ghat, that like those platforms by the bathing places by the river. Of course, the Ganga and the Jalangi flow there. So there would be all these bathing ghats, and these ghats would also function as kind of areas where scholars would gather. And so Jagannath Mishra entered into this world as a young scholar and was immediately recognized in Navadvip for his spotless character, but also for his scholarly attributes. And he was especially recognized and taken under the wing of one very celebrated scholar and astrologer by the name of Nilambar Chakravarti, who just fell in love with Jagannath Mishra's qualities. Now, Nilambar Chakravarti had a daughter, and her name was Sachi Devi. And of course, almost immediately, Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Devi felt a connection. And Nilambar Chakravarti, he felt that connection as well. And so he arranged for Sachi Devi to be married to this young scholar, Jagannath Mishra. And of course, this connection is not anything mundane, and it's not a coincidence, because just as Jagannath Mishra is eternally the father of the Lord, so also Sachi Devi is eternally the mother of the Lord, who is also simultaneously Yashoda and Devaki and Kaushalya. So theirs is a eternal connection that lifetime after lifetime, and in fact they prayed for this lifetime after lifetime, to be able to not just worship the Lord, but to offer their hearts and their love to the Lord in Vatsalya Ras, in the affection of a parent. So Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Devi, they're coming together with such a cause of great fortune, and all of Navadvip was celebrating. They just could practically see whether they were close to these personalities or not. They could just appreciate that these are very, very special, wonderful people. And so everyone was celebrating, but that celebration soon turned into struggle and mourning. Their life was not an easy one. They, of course, being so steeped in Vatsalya Bhav, Vatsalya Ras, they were so eager to have children. And yet somehow or other, by the arrangement of providence, we might say, they faced tragedy, because they had daughters. And in succession, each time they would have a daughter, she would be taken away by the cruel hands of death. And so like this, they had 8 daughters, and none of whom survived. So these 8 daughters, just a really tragic story. And we might be a little bewildered that how could Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Devi, who are such illustrious personalities, personal associates of the Lord, how could they have faced this tragedy? And it's a little mysterious. But also we can understand that on one level, it helps us to appreciate their character, their steadfastness, their faith. Right? Our faith is tested in times of tragedy and calamity. And just like Kunti Maharani prays for calamities to take deeper and deeper shelter of Krishna, in the same way, or in a similar way, Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Devi, with each tragic episode, they were just taking deeper and deeper shelter of the Lord. So they were growing in their faith. Of course, we're not at the level where we can welcome such tragedies, maybe, but at least we can try to keep this in mind when we do experience, through circumstances beyond our control, some setbacks and some difficult situations. So in one sense, we can use this to appreciate their spiritual qualities. Another meaning, quite esoteric, is that just as Krishna's appearance was set by the context of his 6, we can say, elder brothers being killed by Kamsa, the 6 sons of Devaki who were killed. In a similar way, the death of these 8 daughters sets the stage for the appearance of Mahaprabhu. And just as in Krishna Lila, we have a way of understanding a spiritual or metaphorical import to the death of the 6 sons of Devaki, so also the Acharyas explain that one way we can understand the death of the 8 daughters of Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Devi is that so long as we are identifying with the 8 elements, the 5 gross and 3 subtle elements of Prakriti, of the material world, of material nature, the Lord's appearance, we won't be able to experience the Lord's appearance in our minds as we're reading here, and in our hearts. So we need to be free of that misidentification. And so these 8 daughters represent those 8 elements and the identification with those elements. And just as the 6 sons of Devaki, it's after they are killed that the 7th son, who is none other than Lord Balaram, appears. So in a similar way, after the 8 daughters, after the loss of the 8 daughters, Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Devi are able to conceive and then carry to term and celebrate the birth of a beloved son who they name Vishwarup, the very form, the embodiment of the universe. Wonderful name of the Lord. And Vishwarup, it's explained, is none other than that same Balaram. He's an expansion or a manifestation of that Balaram, who is non-different from and is an amsa, a limb of Lord Nityananda. So in the pastimes of Mahaprabhu, that same Krishna Balaram appear as Gauranitai, as Caitanya Mahaprabhu and Sri Nityananda Prabhu. But also that Nityananda Prabhu, he invests his energy in this form of Vishwarup, so that they also have the experience of being biological brothers. And so Sachi Devi and Jagannath Mishra have this experience of having Lord Balaram as their son as well. And of course, Lord Balaram, Lord Nityananda are they're very much connected to Guru Tattva. And so once we're freed from this misidentification with the 8 elements, then we can experience the mercy of Guru. And through the mercy of Guru, Krishna appears within our hearts, or we're able to recognize Krishna, connect to Krishna within our hearts. And so after the appearance of Vishwarup, the stage is really set for the appearance of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, who appears, just as we're reading about Vasudeva, who appears in the mind of Jagannath Mishra, in the heart of Jagannath Mishra, and then in the heart and the womb of Sachi Devi, just as great devatas, gods and goddesses, demigods and demigoddesses appeared and offered prayers in ethereal forms and almost invisible manifestations. Similarly, these great personalities appeared and offered prayers and blessings to Lord Gaurasundara, Caitanya Mahaprabhu, in the womb of Sachi Mata. And like this, not just 9 months, not just 10 months, but by some accounts, I think something like 13 months of pregnancy pass. And everyone starts to become a little worried that, there's something abnormal about this. Why is this child not making his grand appearance in this world? But again, Sachi Mata's, Sachi Devi's father, Nilambar Chakravarti, he being a Trikalgya, being a knower of past, present, and future, and having this mystic arts, he's able to reassure everyone, no, this is just as it's meant to be. He is waiting for the most opportune moment. And so he chooses this Purnima day in the auspicious month of Falgun. But not just any Purnima. He chooses a Purnima that happens to very unusually coincide with a lunar eclipse. And we should know, especially in this context, you still see this today, especially if you're ever in India during a lunar eclipse, but especially at this time, and especially in a place like Navadvip, which was so, as we said, so steeped in learning and so much discussion about all these things and astrology and the effect of the stars and the moon phases and all of this. There was great concern that a lunar eclipse was a very intense time energetically, a very, very intense time. And those kind of, we could say, dark rays of the moon, that situation of darkness enveloping the moon was considered to be inauspicious, actually, and quite dangerous. So it may surprise us. Why would the Lord choose? Usually we say, such and such personality appeared on the most auspicious day, in the most auspicious month, in the most auspicious time. Or sometimes we talk about, even when a devotee we know passes away, one of the ways we often take solace is we say, actually, this day that she passed away on, did you know it's so auspicious for this day, and she's passed away at the most auspicious time, right? And these things are real. They do matter. But it may surprise us that, therefore, that Lord Caitanya chooses the apparently most inauspicious time, the time that everyone's saying this close everything. They even in temples to this day, sometimes you don't take darshan at those times, right? They close the deity curtains, or they close the doors of the temple, and everyone practices all these different things. So why would Mahaprabhu appear? Why would he choose by his own sweet will to appear at such a time? Well, there is we can say a divine trick that Mahaprabhu is playing, because it so happens that one of the things that, in fact, the most powerful thing that was prescribed for all the residents of Navadvip, and perhaps even beyond, to do during this lunar eclipse to counteract the inauspiciousness, is to bathe in the Ganga. And while bathing in the Ganga, to chant the names of God. And more specifically, to chant, I was just listening to a class yesterday where one of my godbrothers was speaking, and he was saying that it's very significant. It wasn't just any names, but they were specifically instructed or encouraged to chant the name of Hari. So they were chanting Hari, Hari, Hari Bol, and Hare Krishna. And Hari is a very special name of Krishna, which, among other things, denotes one who takes away, one who steals away, one who takes away all of our sorrow, all of our suffering, who takes away our sins and our karmic balances, our karmic debts. He takes all of that away. He steals away our hearts. He steals our attention, or as we read in this purport, our consciousness. It's a very powerful name that in Navadvip, the majority of the people had actually fallen away from the stricter practices of Vaishnavism, or of Krishna Bhakti, and had become more engrossed in very materially motivated ritualistic worship, particularly directed towards the goddess. Now, of course, the goddess, there's wonderful descriptions of the connection that the goddess Durga has to the Lord, and particularly to this form of Mahaprabhu. Actually, there's in a book called Caitanya Mangala, Lochan Das Thakur writes about this wonderful conversation that Lord Krishna has with the goddess Durga, where he shows her actually a form of Mahaprabhu. He gives her a sneak preview of his form as Gauranga. And in that episode, Lochan Das Thakur writes so wonderfully and glorifies goddess Durga, and writes about the intimate connection that the Lord Krishna or Vishnu, Narayan has with Durga, that they have this wonderful, we can say, like sibling type of relationship. But unfortunately, rather than appreciating that aspect, the residents of Navadvip, the majority of the residents of Navadvip, were simply approaching the goddess for their material purposes. And so this was very heartbreaking to the local and nearby Vaishnavas, particularly to Advaita Acharya, who was based in Shantipur, but who also had a home and a base in Navadvip, and was kind of part of this minority renegade community, not really renegade, but this kind of, you could say, underground community of Vaishnavas who would gather and pray for the Lord to appear. And so we all know Advaita Acharya's prayers is one of the reasons for Mahaprabhu's descent. So all these residents of Navadvip, although usually many of them would be averse to practices of Krishna Bhakti, or they wouldn't be so attracted to it, in this instance, because of this lunar eclipse, Mahaprabhu arranged it so that everyone was very enthusiastically bathing in the Ganga and chanting these names of Krishna. And really chanting these names of Krishna very from their hearts, right? I mean, this is a bit of a crude example, but if you've ever been on like a flight and maybe you're chanting, you're catching up on rounds or something, and I know I'll speak for myself. I don't want to speak for anyone else, but sometimes I'll be on like in a plane and I'm chanting kind of half-heartedly, inattentively. And then what happens? The plane hits some turbulence. And all of a sudden, it's like, not only are you physically jarred, but it's almost like you remember, oh, death can come at any time. And, some fear is there, some anxiety is there, some awareness is there, and we start chanting. Almost automatically, our chanting becomes quite focused and sincere, at least for those moments. I know Radhanath Maharaj, he sometimes talks about an experience he had on a flight where it wasn't just a little turbulence, it was quite according to the way he tells the story. Of course, he tells these stories in such a dramatic fashion, but the way he tells the story, the passengers were really like, they were preparing to meet their maker, as they say, because it really seemed like it really could be the end. Like they would have to crash land or something. I think even the pilot was saying that, like that. And Maharaj talks about how it was one of the most Krishna conscious experiences of his whole life. And he says that his chanting at that time, he, in his humility also, he said, I don't think I've ever chanted like that since. He said, I wish I missed that chanting. I wish I could chant like that. So, if that's maybe an experience that we can relate to a little bit more than a lunar eclipse, perhaps for us in our cultural context, a lunar eclipse is not that scary. But for these residents of Navadvip,
Venkata Prabhu, I just wanted to quickly enhance your analogy. When there's an emergency on the plane, this oxygen masks, they drop down, and they look like japa beads. So that's
they're dangling there like japa beads. Yeah.
Just like japa beads.
Yeah. Thank you for fleshing out that picture for us. Yeah. So even though it's hard for us to relate to, let's try to put ourselves in the shoes or the footsteps of these residents of Navadvip for whom this was like that, turbulence or plane crash, and with some sincerity. Actually, they were chanting with intensity and some real sincerity. They were chanting. And the Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami tells us in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he actually says it specifically, which I think is really interesting. It's one of the first places you see in any kind of sort of Vedic literature or subsequent literature, where it specifically says by name both the Hindus and the Muslims were chanting together. Even the Muslims, seeing the Hindus, were also chanting, and Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says in a lighthearted spirit. So the Muslims maybe were not feeling the same intensity, but they were also appreciating. So it wasn't their chanting wasn't with ill intent. They were also kind of joining in. And so this is Mahaprabhu. This is in some ways very mystically sort of predicting Mahaprabhu's impact that would one day be a worldwide impact. Of course, Mahaprabhu himself says, one day my empowered Senapati will go and bring this holy name to anywhere that I've not personally taken it. I've entrusted it. So Mahaprabhu's mission was to go beyond even the boundaries of caste, creed, religion, race, ethnicity, nationality, all of these things. And so as an early indication of this, these two communities that were living side by side, but sometimes were in conflict, these two communities were actually chanting. They were both, in that situation chanting. So everyone was chanting, all the residents of Navadvip were chanting. And in this space, in this context, the Lord chose to make his appearance. And I'm just looking at the time, and I know we want to save some time for questions and comments and reflections. So I'll just conclude, but because it is Jagannath Mishra Utsav, I do want to speak a little bit about and share something about that next day. So all of this happens on that Gaur Purnima experience of the lunar eclipse on that day, that Purnima day in the month of Falgun, and the Lord appears. And the next day, there are festivities, Jagannath Mishra, in that same spirit of Nanda Maharaj. And in the spirit that Vasudeva, it's so interesting, we're speaking about the mind of Vasudeva. So we might say Nandotsav was Nanda Baba's opportunity to celebrate the joy of the birth of his son. But poor Vasudeva, he didn't get to have that experience. But Vasudeva, it's explained, our acharyas explained, Vasudeva actually was holding the grandest festival. Where? Manasa, in his mind. In his mind and in his heart. Of course, there's a heart-mind connection. In his mind and in his heart, he was giving away so many cows in charity. He was giving gold ornaments. He was arranging for so many, sweets and milk products. He was doing all of this, and he was experiencing so much joy and so much gratitude in his mind and in his heart. But this same Vasudeva appears as Jagannath Mishra. That same Nanda Maharaj appears again as Jagannath Mishra. And in the form of Jagannath Mishra, he is able to, not just in his mind, but also in the external sense, he's also able to celebrate. And so Jagannath Mishra, it's explained also, just as Nanda Maharaj did, Jagannath Mishra, although interestingly enough, Mahaprabhu's family, the family that Mahaprabhu appeared in, was not a wealthy family. They were quite, I wouldn't say impoverished, but they were quite modest. But still, Jagannath Mishra, in his own way, to whatever extent he could, he gave in charity so much. He arranged for feasts that would be fed to everyone without discrimination. He asked for blessings. He went and personally requested, although a Brahmin himself and certainly capable of giving blessings, he went to practically all of the Brahmins and learned, scholars of Navadvip, and asked for blessings for his son and for his family. And in this way, Jagannath Mishra celebrated. Nilambar Chakravarti, the father-in-law of Jagannath Mishra, the father of Sachi Devi, he gave an astrological reading for the boy, and it's explained. He said that this child's chart is unlike any other. This personality has all of the markings of Lord Narayan himself. He has the constellations indicate that he has unlimited, unbounded compassion, that he will deliver countless souls, that he will give great happiness to everyone, that he will be the source of bliss and joy for everyone. And like that, Nilambar Chakravarti, he gave so many readings that gave great pleasure to everyone, and especially to Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Devi. And of course, Nilambar Chakravarti, very sensitively and diplomatically, he withheld certain parts of the reading of the chart that indicated Mahaprabhu would take sannyas, because he knew the heart of his daughter and son-in-law, and he knew that they wouldn't be able to bear it, and that it would spoil the mood of the utsav. So he kept that to himself. And like this, the child's glories and future activities were predicted, and there was so many other festivities and so many activities. The child was named Nilambar Chakravarti. He based on the chart, he said that this child, he has the symptoms of Lord Narayan, who is the maintainer and sustainer of the universe. So a very fitting name for him will be Vishwambhar. Vishwambhar means the maintainer of the universe. Interestingly, in the verse that we looked at today, the name of the Lord that was given was Vishvatma. And so Vishvatma and Vishwambhar are practically synonyms of one another. They're both very similar. So the Lord was named Vishwambhar. And of course, we've all heard this, that because he was born under the neem tree, and because neem is very bitter. Actually, last night we made an offering to our deities at home, and we made a sabji with neem leaves, and it was intense. It was ecstatically intense, but it has that sharp, bitter taste to it. Even just a couple of leaves, small leaves, you just put into a sabji or something, and it has that powerful, like Karela, like bitter melon, even more bitter. So neem leaves are very bitter, and they're very medicinal. And so because neem leaves are very bitter, in this kind of sweet, lighthearted superstition, you can say. The ladies of Navadvip, they said, may this boy be bitter to any ill-intentioned entities, or even to death himself. So may such entities find this boy too bitter and they won't bother him. They'll leave him alone. And also because neem leaves are very medicinal, they're very healing. They have so many healing propensities. So in this way also they said this boy, he will heal and uplift others. And also because he was born under that neem tree. So they said, let's call him Nimai. And of course, because of his being very effulgent and golden in luster, Dvisha Akrishnam, this golden luster, they would call him Gauranga, one whose limbs are like gold, or Gaurasundar, one who is very beautiful, being golden. And another thing that they noticed practically from the birth of this child, actually from the first moments of his appearance from the womb of Sachimata, that he would respond to and become very happy and blissful and laugh and smile very beautifully whenever the names of Hari were chanted. And when the names of Hari, when the friends and family would stop chanting the names of Hari for any reason, he would just start wailing and crying and weeping. And so seeing this boy's extraordinary connection to the name of Hari, they also called him Gaura Hari, the golden Lord Hari. So I want to read, just in closing, and then we'll maybe have just a few minutes of questions. I want to read a description of this Jagannatha Mishra Utsav that's given in Sri Caitanya Mangala of Lochan Das Thakur. It's a very brief description. Lochan Das Thakur says, the entire universe could not contain the boundless joy that Jagannatha Mishra felt upon looking at the face of his boy. Gaura's face shone with the soothing glow of hundreds of moons. His smile resembled a blossoming lotus flower. His elegant, highly raised nose defeated the beauty of a sesame flower. The rays of Gauranga's dazzling body appeared nectarian. Affection rises in the heart upon seeing his red lips, his finely shaped chin, and his shining cheeks. His neck resembled that of a lion, and his shoulders were as powerful as an elephant's. He had a broad chest, and his long arms hung down to his knees. Gaura's entire body is saturated with bliss. Where is this? The combined effect of all this beauty was like a river flowing with nectar. The auspicious marks and symptoms indicated a most exalted personality, a king of kings. Indra, Chandra, the Kinnaras and the Gandharvas and other demigods came to earth just to feast their eyes on Gauranga's indescribable beauty. Upon seeing the Lord, everyone's eyes became anointed with nectar, just as if they were seeing their dearmost. Just after his birth, everyone came to admire the sweet, satisfying beauty of the boy. Everyone felt very comfortable in his presence. They felt as if they already had a long-standing and intimate relationship with him. Seeing the boy's beautiful golden limbs filled their hearts with unlimited happiness. Millions of cupids fled in shame upon beholding the beauty of his lotus face. The whole city of Navadvip filled with chants of Jai, Jai. The ever-fresh transcendental Cupid had appeared as the son of Jagannatha Mishra. Even the boy's crying sounded like nectar to their ears. The ladies observing him thought he must be an incarnation of the Lord of Goloka. Feeling great ecstasy, I, Lochan Das, proclaim that the Lord of all creation has now appeared on earth. Shri Gaurachandra Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Jagannatha Mishra ki jai, Sachimata ki jai.
Jai. Thank you, Venkata Bhatta Prabhu. Would anyone like to contribute, to reflect, or ask a question? My reflection is that sometimes when the Lord is setting the scene, it may seem as though something is breaking in our life, but it's actually Krishna is setting the scene to appear in our life. So that's my takeaway from the class. Thank you, Prabhu.
Beautiful, beautiful takeaway. Thank you.
I have a dry question, Prabhu. I was wondering if there was any difference, or what is the difference between Krishna having appeared in Vasudev's mind and in his heart?
Yeah, this is a nice question. I feel like you've asked me this question. I feel like I'm having a deja vu because I feel like I've had the occasion to speak on Janmashtami, and I feel like you've asked me this question before, but I may be mixing it up.
Yeah, I don't remember.
It's a little, I have to admit, it's a little mysterious to me. I'm open to hear what others have to say. I'll just share that in my kind of reading and reflecting on this, my understanding is that his appearance in the mind of Vasudeva indicates more this cultivation of sattva and ultimately shuddha sattva in the consciousness, and then traveling to the heart is more getting into that mood or that bhava. So I think, in these texts, mind and heart are often used interchangeably, but my understanding is that first the mind, because of this kind of purification of consciousness, then the heart, then we can actually feel with the heart. And then, of course, the heart of Devaki and the womb of Devaki. But if others have any insights or reflections, or maybe you've read something about this that you'd like to share, please do. Yes, Adipurush.
Of course, the mind and the intelligence has to do with knowing, and the heart has to do with feeling. And we were very impressed with your training as a thespian that your teacher was instructing, that you become so deeply absorbed in the character that you forget your other identity. We had a guest here, right here in this room, maybe, what's his name? Very famous actor. He used to have the voice of "Welcome to Bell Atlantic." He was the voice of Darth Vader. What's his name?
James Earl Jones.
James Earl Jones. He stayed right here, a few feet from where I'm sitting right now, as a guest in the Bhakti Center. He was doing a film in the Second Avenue subway station. So he stayed with us for 3 weeks. And for 3 weeks, he was so immersed in that character that he would not speak to us at all. He was just that person who was the personality who he was supposed to represent. So the thespian, he's immersed in that Krishna Lila very deeply, and the ability to transfer that feeling to the audience. We were speaking the other day about Murari Bapu. Murari Bapu? He does the Ramayana narrative. No costume, no music, no scenery, just him telling Lord Ramachandra's pastimes. And 9,000 people will sit there and he'll speak for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. And the people are weeping. They're crying. He is able to communicate the feeling of those characters and the love that they had. And in the class also, sometimes I see the class is about, Vasudeva, his children were killed, and everybody's sitting there. No tears. The speaker doesn't have tears. The audience doesn't have tears. Everybody's just kind of like glazed. The eyes are glazed over, and but that.
No. We have so many people that keep their cameras off. Maybe they're in tears. Maybe that's the reason.
Maybe that's true. But I mean, it's a possibility that like Radhanath Swami, he told us that when he saw Prabhupada chanting Jai Radha Madhava, and he saw the depth and the intensity of his feeling, he in his heart he said, "This is somebody who I want to surrender to. I want to follow." Bhima wants to say something. I'm sorry I'm talking so long.
Thank you, Adipusha. Wonderful, wonderful insights. Thank you so much.
Hari, Venkata, again, ditto, wonderful class. So much learned. I loved the fact that you marked the idea, the concept that Krishna Lord Chaitanya appears in the mind first. The conception, we say we're conceived into this world. We conceive an idea, and we actually take birth through conception. And also, so that really rings it for us Westerners, especially, who have very little experience being brought up with these stories and these leelas. We understand how applicable they are when Krishna, comes into our life. Whether the enlightenment, we become aware of Krishna's presence in our own heart, and the purifications we go through are mirrored in the leelas, in his leelas, whether it be destroying demons and destroying the impurities, the anartas within us. I just also wanted to say that form of acting is called method acting. I'm sure you're familiar with that word, method acting. And that is why Prabhupada has the method of the practice of devotional service. We dress the deity is because we are acting as if we are dressing Krishna. The majority of us, when we do these things, make offerings, we do it with the hope that Krishna is feeling our love, or at least our attention. And so we go through like children playing with dolls, and we're acting, pretending, and then but then the pretending ceases. Krishna says, okay, you know what, you're very vigilant in trying to tie your too short rope around my waist. I see you sweating there serving me, so you catch me. And that form of method acting, that form of practicing bhakti yoga, is acting for Krishna, saying, look, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do this. And then Krishna says, oh yeah, well, I'll do this. And he reciprocates in some small way, which is always mystical and is always so endearing to the heart, that the acting is not, the acting ceases, and the reality begins, the true reality. So wonderful class. That inspired those thoughts within me. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. I hope if my sharing was even a fraction of just the wonderful realization that you just shared. So thank you so much. Thank you all, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Hopefully taking some time out to reflect on this amazing personality, Jagannatha Mishra, and his celebration of Mahaprabhu, which is really our celebration, because Mahaprabhu's appearance is for all of us. And so this is really our day to celebrate our great fortune, our completely unearned, undeserved, but gratefully accepted grace. Thank you all so much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Unearned, undeserved Krishna's grace ki jai. Venkata Bhatta Prabhu ki jai. Have a wonderful day, dear devotees. Who knows, maybe the next Acharya or the next incarnation will be born on the airplane during an emergency, when everybody is praying intensively. Hare Krishna.
I have one question. I have one quick question.
Go ahead.
Haribol,
Yes,
why do these classes have to end? Why do we have to hang up? It's the only time I get with devotees. Hare Krishna. I love you all. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Venkata Bhatta Prabhu is working, and he has to make a hard stop. Yeah, unfortunately. But we'll have him again this month. He's given 2 more classes this month. So we look forward to it. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a wonderful day. And thank you very much. It's a highlight of my day.